Welcome to the Pursuing Wholeness podcast. My name is Precious Jewel, and today I'll be discussing the difference between self-love and self-worship. In today's culture, self-love is all the craze. If you look up the hashtag self-love on Instagram, there are over 59 million posts on the subject. Some of the messaging is healthy, but some of the messaging teeters on the line of self-worship. So what is the line? When does loving oneself actually become self-absorbency and unhealthy? Well, let's start by defining the two. Self-love is to have regard for one's own well-being. It is a necessity, not a luxury. Jesus commands us to love your neighbor as yourself. So it could be deduced that one should know how to love themselves properly in order to extend love to others. Self-worship is to put oneself before God. It is extravagant devotion to self. There are some who believe that it is wrong to demonstrate self-love, but what they are actually speaking to is self-worship. There are some who think that they are preaching self-care, but what they're actually preaching is self-indulgence. I found that the main difference between the two is not the action, but the motive behind the action. There's a pretty fine line, but it's important that we are able to differentiate between the two. Here are some key differences between self-love and self-worship. Self-love is grounded in God's love, while self-worship is grounded in self. 1 John 4:19 says, "We love because he first loved us." The way to properly love oneself is to accept God's love first. We accept God's love, we love him in response, and then we're able to give it out. However, self-worship believes I already have within myself the love that I need. This isn't true. Only God's love is able to fulfill us. In fact, God is love. You cannot have love without him, and thus you cannot engage in self-love without first accepting God's love. Trying to love oneself without God is a sure way to engage in self-worship. Self-love is the care of oneself, physically, mentally, and spiritually, in order to ultimately bring God glory. Self-worship cares only to bring glory to self. We aren't doing God or others any favors by not taking care of ourselves. And though this may sound extreme, this is embedded in some messaging out there. It is important to tend to our needs so that we can be our best self and live a life that brings God glory. The problem is when we seek to be the best in every area because we want the glory. When we want people to praise us and be in awe of who we are. When we want people to be jealous and envious of us. This is when it becomes self-worship. Self-love empowers us to look to the needs of others. Self-worship is only concerned about the needs of self, even to the detriment of others. It sees God and others as merely a means to get our needs met. Self-love says, I prioritize health in every area so that I can serve. The more we pursue health and wholeness, the more we are able to give. We cannot pour from an empty cup. Healthy self-love benefits those around us. Self-worship says, how will you serve me? Self-worship is harmful to those around us because it will go to any lengths necessary to please itself, even if this causes harm to others. Often we are told to measure relationships, career paths, churches, schools, etc. by this question: how can this serve me? This is dangerous because we can easily become so self-absorbed that we only seek to be served and not to serve. Start showing up to your relationships, jobs, churches, etc., asking, How can I serve here? It will change everything. Self-love is not centered on feeling good, but rather on health and wholeness. Self-love is not always bubble baths and face masks and just eating the cookie because we want it. Self-love is also discipline. It's sometimes denying ourselves for the moment for a greater delayed outcome. It's working out when we don't feel like it. It's diving into the Word of God when we have no desire to. It's having difficult conversations and setting healthy boundaries with people. It's saying no to things that may feel good to our flesh, but are damaging to our soul. It is confronting and breaking unhealthy habits. Self-love is not always easy, and sometimes must be tough, just like loving anyone else is. Self-worship prioritizes pleasure over purpose. This means that it will engage in anything that makes self feel good, even if it means sacrificing purpose. Self-worship holds the belief that pleasure is purpose, that the reason for everything and every person's existence is to bring self-pleasure. Self-worship will reject anything that promotes self-denial. Some practical ways to practice self-love are to be patient with yourself. You will not have it all together all at once. The patience you would have with a child who is learning and growing is the same patience you should have with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your best friend. Forgive yourself. You aren't doing any favors by letting guilt reign over you. Forgive yourself, learn from your mistake, and do better next time. Believe the best about yourself. Don't believe the lies that you aren't enough or worthy. Believe what God has spoken over you. Do not ignore your needs. Take care of yourself without harming others in the process so that you can better serve others. Some practical ways to avoid self-worship is to not be self-seeking. Don't be arrogant. Serve others expecting nothing in return. Exercise discipline in all areas. Worship the Lord. When your focus is outward and on Him, there is no room for self-absorbency. I pray that something said in this episode has helped you in your pursuit of wholeness. I'm so excited to hear your stories. Thank you for joining me on this journey.